Every episode of our PBS television series, Painting and Travel with Roger and Sarah Bansemer, includes a travelogue and, of course, a painting demonstration. Here I'm using oils to paint a diesel locomotive, but on this particular video, we thought you might enjoy seeing an extended version of the travelogue portion of our show from Season 8, where we visited the Apple Valley Model Railroad Club.
It's a very rainy day, which makes it perfect to do something inside, and Larry Morton and I are standing inside of this building right here. It's the Hendersonville, North Carolina train depot, and we'll take a look around and see a wonderful model railroad layout. How much fun is the hobby?
It's tremendous. I retired 10 years ago, and I've never had more fun.
And do you meet a lot of people that have a similar interest?
Well, this area is particularly a hub for model railroading. We have almost 90 members in our club.
And everybody has a different specialty?
For the most part, yes. That's the beauty of a club, is we have expertise in all areas represented within the club. We have electrical engineers in the club, which are invaluable to getting all this to work properly. And fellows who are scenery specialists, and other fellows who are specialists at building the actual trains themselves, scratch building something, which means not working from a kit, but just buying raw plastic and lumber and building your own replica of something. We have other fellows that are great at doing the historical research for the railroad if we're trying to model something specific. So yeah, it takes all sorts of talents to put together a good model railroad.
What is the difference in the sizes?
Mainly the difference is allows model railroaders to choose a size train that's appropriate to what they want to do in terms of a model. For instance, I have a train layout at home that fills my basement. Someone else may live in an apartment or a townhouse and have a spare bedroom to build a layout. And they might want to run long trains. They can't possibly do it with a larger scale railroad, but the small N scale or even HO lends itself to that type of environment. For instance, the HO size, which is our club layout size, is the most popular. It's about 75% of all model railroads in the United States. And that means that there are more manufacturers building a wider variety of trains, of structures, and of materials. Where if you go to a size like G scale or even S scale, you wind up having to scratch build a lot of the things yourself because commercially they're not available. But that's appealing to some model railroaders. That's what they like to do. Others like to just buy something out of a box and put it on their layout.
I see. And what about this fabulous model right here?
That was built over 100 years ago by one of the locomotive companies, and they built it as a fixture for their engineering staff to use to test ways to build a steam locomotive.
Larry, how authentic is this section?
Well, none of the sections are authentic. Okay, one of the things you can do in a model railroad is you can choose to build an authentic layout and model towns or areas exactly as they were, and another is a completely freelanced layout, which this is.
But it certainly has an authentic look. I mean,
Right.
This is this area, and some of the buildings certainly look familiar to me.
Well, the idea here is to capture the flavor of Western North Carolina. Okay, so in each town, we wanted to put one or two structures that really exist in those towns, and the rest of the structures are just to cover the flavor of what was going on around the 1950s in Western North Carolina. But the distillery is an authentic model based on photographs and dimensions and blueprints of an authentic building that existed. This was a distillery.
Lots of detail. I can see the individual shingles, and it's got a nice sign. Would this be a water?
That's a water tower,
Water
yes.
tower.
Mm-hmm.
Is a train layout like this constantly evolving?
Yes. Model railroaders say their layout is never complete. It's never done. Because just about the time you look at it and you can't think of anything else to do, you'll get an idea. Hey, I'd love to tear down the passenger station and build the one that really existed. Or, you know, some brainstorm pops up and you want to make a change to your layout.
That sounds really difficult to me because the little I know about railroading, you've got to put the track in and get the grading just right to start with. Otherwise, you'll have a mess.
That's
the train
right.
won't quite
That's right.
make it up to...
It's the most important thing in building a model railroad is to have outstanding track work so that you don't have any problems. You don't have any issues with trains coming off the track, or like you said, the grade is too steep and you can't pull a train up the grade. That is key to building a successful model railroad.
Is there any maintenance here?
Oh, the biggest thing is keeping the track clean. We're in an old, very porous building, which pulls in, there's also a lot of traffic right by the street here, so it pulls a lot of dust and dirt in here, and we are constantly cleaning the track to make the trains run well.
A tiny paintbrush or something
Actually,
to
we
dust it
have
off?
track cleaning cars.
A track cleaning car?
Yes, there's tank cars with a cleaning fluid in them that disperses it on the rails, and then we have box cars with a weighted pad underneath that drags along the rails and scrapes the crud off of the rails.
Perfect.
Yes, and the signals actually work correctly.
Really?
Yes, when you run a train, you have to watch the signals so that you don't crash into another train. For instance, if a train goes into that tunnel, that will turn red until he gets a certain distance past, letting the next train know you can't go in there yet because there's a train too close to you.
So you don't have an on-off switch and the trains are running or not running. You're really engineering each train on each track, and you have to...
Each person running a train has a little handheld controller about the size of a pack of cigarettes, and he talks directly to the locomotive. There's a computer chip in every locomotive, and he is running the train. In the old days when I was a kid, you ran the tracks. You had a transformer that put power to the tracks. You would increase or decrease the voltage, and everything on the tracks would go in the same direction and would go faster or slower. Now we talk individually to each locomotive. With the evolution of miniature electronics, so much has happened in this hobby, like a lot of other hobbies too.
You can get better results than with the new technology. And when you're building the layout, when you're decorating with the trees and the brush, you must have all sorts of stuff to work with.
Oh yes, there are several companies that manufacture model railroad scenery supplies, and you, of course, being a large layout like this, we buy in bulk to save cost. But when we roll in here to do scenery work, we have a couple carts just loaded with all sorts of scenery material to work with.
And the outcroppings, the rocks, the cliffside look terrific.
Plaster of Paris poured into rubber molds of real rocks.
Oh, well, that's why it looks so good.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you paint the buildings, it looks like some of them have been lightly distressed.
Yes, it's called weathering. Most of it's done with airbrushes. But for instance, on this platform, he would use a fine paintbrush and individually stain the different planks in the deck.
I see how some of them have been highlighted, and that does make it look real. This room has a little different look. It seems like it's a bit less about the scenery and more about lots of tracks and lots of trains. What's happening in here?
Well, when we built this whole layout, obviously we talked about what specifically we wanted to represent. And of course, being located here in Hendersonville, we wanted to include Hendersonville and Asheville. So that's the area that you're in here. So it's a little less rugged mountains and more metropolitan. Yeah, this would be a typical through freight that might come out of Knoxville, Tennessee, and come into Asheville and drop off some cars and pick up some other cars headed for points east through North Carolina.
Sky operates the train by using his controller there, just that small instrument. And this is the panel, one of the panels, and it's got a lot of switches. I won't touch them, but what do they do?
This panel is used to operate the Asheville yard. There's one position known as yard master, and he would throw all the switches and turnouts here to control the trains that are working in the yard, building and taking apart trains that have arrived. It can also be done electronically from a controller, but it's rather tedious to do in a yard operation, so we build a panel like this instead.
This is nice and straightforward, I guess. You can see it all laid out here.
Right. You can
don't have
see
to
the
go to
yard
another
laid
screen.
out, and you also have lights on here to tell you which way every one of the switches is thrown.
Are there some passenger cars in this section too?
We have one passenger train that we run through the layout occasionally. And one of the things here is that club members can bring their own individual trains in here and run them. So you might come in here on a Saturday and see trains from the Northeast, trains from the West Coast, trains from Florida. What you're seeing now are club-owned trains and cars.
You know, I'd never thought about that as being one of the purposes of the Railroad Club, but it makes sense now that you said it. You might have your own beautiful train, locomotive, but not the space to run it. And so you can bring it in here and use the tracks that everybody's built and play with it here.
That's correct. I would say more of our members do not have layouts at home than those that do. And that is the beauty of the club. You can come in here and play with your trains.
What a nice idea, and make friends. And then, of course, you have this open to the public, and it's free, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes. We're open Wednesday afternoon and Saturdays from 10 to 2, year-round.
And I've noticed one section for children, too, that they could actually
yes.
get into a little bit. Larry, I've really enjoyed seeing the layout. It's amazingly nice, so intricate, and I can feel the love put into all of these trains and the buildings and all the scratch-built stuff. It's really great.
Well, thank you. And on behalf of the Apple Valley Model Railroad Club, you're welcome back anytime.
Good, I'll come back.